Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome back to another vlog. How are you? Hope you're all okay. How am I, you might ask? Fine. So, why I feel a bit rubbish today, I don't know. Maybe it's the fact that I need to wash my hair. Those memes that are like, when I haven't washed my hair and I feel like the biggest pile of stinking poop ever, everybody needs to die, me included, and the world's gonna end. I think that's the feeling I'm getting today. I mean, it doesn't even look particularly greasy, but I don't know. I don't know what the vibes are, but they're not super good. However, I've still managed to sit down and do some uni work today for the last couple hours. I also uploaded last week's vlog, so go watch it, please. So I'm still trying to get through that like 450-page doctoral thesis right now. I'm on 120 pages, which is actually only page 97 because all the extra material they put in there. Um, it's going slowly. I'm reading it all and it's all really interesting. Obviously, I don't actually need to make note of all of it because not all of it's going to be relevant. But I am trying to see, you know, like stealing references because I'm like, maybe that book would be good to actually use for my data collection. So I'm working my way through it. But I've just been thinking, and the way that this dissertation is set up is it's talking about the presentation of Neanderthals specifically in museums, but it's also kind of, poking its nose in other areas like images that have been published, as in like actual like paintings, pictures, or books also. So it's very like media focused on Neanderthals and how that impacts public perception, but also a little bit similar to what I'm trying to do, which is the whole how did we get there? Um what was the influence of this media on the public or on the academic sphere kind of vibe. So I'm reading it, it's really good. But the way it's set up, they are talking a little bit like in sections. So they'll be like maybe talking about subsistence and then they'll give a example of a specific museum exhibition or published piece of work that talks about that and then again how it relates to all those other things I've just mentioned. And it's making me think that maybe in my results and discussion section I should split it up maybe so like my data collection is going to be like a larger piece of evidence of literature turned into quantitative data and qualitative data as well, but it's going to be a lot of like language and semantics. But would it be interesting to separate those literature into sections? So rather than generalizing across time periods, go thematically and talk about those chronologically. Does that make sense? So, like, rather than splitting the discussion up into like 1800s, 1850s, 1900s, 1950s, and then in all of those sections just talking about what people are saying, maybe splitting it into like themes. So I could do a section on diet. What's the trend of discussion on Neanderthal diet? And then I can reference all of those authors and then talk about how that opinion's changed, what's the impact. Um, I don't know. I mean, I'll talk to my dissertation supervisor next week when I meet him again. But I don't know. I'm just thinking it might be a more sensible way to split up the discussion. You guys can let me know in the comments. Not that I get any comments, but if you think that's a good idea, let me know. I did realise whilst I was rewatching my last week's vlog to edit and upload it, and also just rewatching what I've been saying, because if you notice, the camera angle's changed because I realised I didn't actually say what I meant to say in a very nice and eloquent way. But I never actually ended up telling you about how the progress of my master's research has changed. I just want to talk about that for a second because I think it's quite good and important to say while I'm kind of tracking the progress of my work. Um, so basically, my initial suggestion for this research was to look at Neanderthal acculturation theory by modern humans. So the theory being Neanderthals couldn't do much, but when they did do it, it's because modern humans taught them and showed them how. And I was going to look at how that theory was initially made, why, how, when do we get there, what was the effect of that theory, do people still believe it, and then kind of just talking about its impact in the last, say, 20, 30 years, because it's been around since like the 80s. And then that lended me to a very interesting literature review, which was basically what I've now decided to do for the whole research, which is linguistically analysing written sources, publications talking about Neanderthals and modern humans. So I had been writing this literature review, which was basically going into the influences that impacted research. So, social things like politics, economics, environmental studies, also scientific things like how has the progress of our understanding on evolution changed, and also like technology, what technologies have we got now that we didn't used to have that has impacted our ability to interpret and understand the evidence. What new evidence have we got that's maybe changed how we perceive these things? And so because I was doing all this, and I personally really enjoy it because it feels like a social critique, and I also like language analysis, so I was having a great time. And when I met with my supervisor just before Easter, he said, you were going to do all of this for the literature review and then go ahead and do data collection of artifacts and then go ahead and analyze them and then go ahead and make a new framework. That just seems like way too much potentially. Like I believe you could do it, but is it a bit much? And I was like, you might be right. And he did say, well, that could actually set you up for a pretty good PhD. Like it's a big enough project where you could do that and do a good job of it. But maybe I wouldn't be able to do it justice in 30,000 words within 1 year, which I thought, that's probably a very smart thing to suggest. And so, having spoken to him about that, we were like, well, if we change the master's research to basically just that literature review section and then approach it differently by using coding software and Vivo, I've said it a million times now, I feel like, to actually pick out key pieces of writing from bigger texts, and then you can analyze that, turn it into quantitative data, but also it's qualitative, and it also can be an analysis based on like your objective understanding of what the literature's saying. And so we've basically changed it to that. And then last week when I spoke to him, he was like, how about we just get rid of modern humans entirely from this conversation? Obviously, they're going to pop up a bit in this literature review because our understanding of modern humans is very important context for how we've approached our understanding of Neanderthals and the whole like, are there our cousins? Are there our long lost primitive ancestors? Our last link to apes vibe? All of that is enmeshed with our interpretation of prehistoric modern humans. Um, so basically, my dissertation now is a language and literature analysis of Neanderthal publications to understand and pattern the like trends of understanding and almost like interpretation of Neanderthal research. And the whole point being to pick out all of those influences again, politics, economics, um, religion, all of these things which have then influenced those initial interpretations, how those interpretations have changed, and then, of course, influenced new ones, and how new technology, new evidence has also influenced new ones, to kind of then do a like call for arms at the end of it, to be like, well, if this is what we know, and this is what's impacted us, and this is how it's maybe limited our ability to do objective and nuanced interpretation, how should we approach it today in 2026? How should we as archaeologists continue to progress our like to progress our discipline? How do we get better at what we do? So that's kind of the whole new idea, if that makes any sense. I hope it does. Um, and so that's why I was thinking about how am I going to separate these sections, maybe thematically. I don't know yet. We'll come to it when we get there. I've still not written the lit review yet. So I'm on chapter 2 of 6, and that's not till like chapter 5, so we don't need to worry about her just yet. But yeah, I thought it was interesting having read this thesis because she talks, which I think is funny, about how Neanderthals now have a PR team, and like how within this PR team, I think I'm part of it, that we've really trying to show Neanderthals in a different light. They're adaptive. They show evidence of like community, altruism, all of these things, and how that's a very like modern current attempt and opinion to understand what the evidence looks like. And part of my discussion is probably going to be how we flip flopped on our opinions about them. We didn't give them much at all. Then we kind of started to give them some kind of credit, and then how it's like we're not giving them enough. So we've almost designed this PR team to try fight back for those people who just can't seem to accept what the data and evidence is suggesting. And I would say, though, that the PR team can maybe go a little bit too far with interpretation, get a bit creative, a bit whimsical with it, maybe. Um, but my example always comes to my mind is in France or Spain, probably a mix of both, to be honest, doing studies on cave art. If we're using the exact same techniques, thermoluminescence, um, the thorium one, or even radiocarbon dating for certain like artifacts. And if the dating is well and truly modern human, it doesn't get half the amount of critique that it would if the dates ever so slightly slip into potential Neanderthal territory. And for that reason, we've now created this PR team of people who don't only write academic papers, but books, which, as to an extent, kind of written for just a general layman audience, just the general population, the public, to influence them as well. Because I think a huge part of the Neanderthal conversation is how they've been perceived in our culture. And I think even today, there are so many people out there who still just see them as like the hunter gatherer, caveman, hunter, pushing mammoths off of cliffs and like bonking each other on the head, cannibals, and all of these things. Like they're still today, whether it's academics or just in general population, not always understood or accepted as human. And I just think that's really important to discuss, and that's the whole point of my dissertation. Really, is I want to work for this PR team, and that's what I'm trying to do. But again, I do still think it's important to maybe not go too far with the PR. Like, not all publicity is good publicity, is kind of the vibe I'm going for here. Um, in the same way, not all interpretation is objective and nuanced and good. Sometimes it's too much, getting a little bit creative, and we need to come back to the drawing board and look at what the evidence actually says. Which, again, I think you do fall into a problem with when it comes to these books that are not just academically written, because they want to paint this picture of them overcoming hardship, and it's almost like the rags to riches tale. And I think that's why modern humans are so, in prehistory, is so like looked upon in this like um wistful fashion. It's very much like what, like they were surviving all these things, but at the end of it they still came together to be creative and loving and care for each other and survive. And we as humans, like, we pushed through that difficulty, we struggled to come out on top. And like we have this, it's like superhero feeling, about them. And I think in some ways the PR team's trying to give that to Neanderthals, and that's because it's appealing. Like, people enjoy it, people enjoy a success story. But Neanderthals didn't succeed, and we don't know why. We'll never know why, but I feel like it's also like we can't step away from that discussion too far. They didn't succeed. Why? But just because they didn't also doesn't mean that they didn't have that rags to riches, just maybe not in the same way that we as modern humans did. Um, I feel like that was a random bit of a rant side tangent there, but basically my research direction's changed, and I can't wait to work on the Neanderthal PR team. Happy Tuesday, everybody. I'm all dressed to go to my lecture. I just wanted to show you the outfit because I'm going a bit outside my comfort zone. But, I keep saying I want to experiment a bit more, try and get a bit more of like the grungy, whimsy vibe in my fits that are not just t shirts and jeans. And since it's so nice outside today, I was like, you could wear a skirt. And now I have a long skirt I bought from Primark Octoberish last year, and I think I've worn it once. I thought today I'm going to try it, especially with the new jumper I got last week. So I hope you can see it if I go stand in that corner. Kinda. I mean, you can't see that it's a long skirt, I guess. Maybe we can sort that angle out, get a better picture. But I'm really excited to leave the house. Look at the sunshine; it's beautiful. I still think it's only about 12 degrees. And I'm a bit concerned because I'm going to go to the library after my lecture. And one thing about the library is it's always flipping freezing once you sat there. So maybe I'll regret this later. I don't know. But right now I feel good about it. So I'm going to go for my lecture now and I'll catch up with you later. I just thought of a better way. Maybe if I stand on the couch, avoid some of Len's mice. See the vision? Do you get it? Do you get the vibes? Considered putting on my massive black boots, but I think it actually might be just a little bit too much. Do you know what I mean? So I'll probably just do Converse. Pretty typical, pretty boring. But yeah, I will catch up with you later. Just popped into Morrison's and got myself a sweet treat. Pistachio croissant? It's actually unreal and it was £1. Happy Tuesday, everybody. I'm back home now. I went to my lecture this morning, which was really good. And then we were talking about how in 2 weeks' time we're going to go on a field trip to Creswell Crags, which is like a upper Paleolithic site around North Yorkshire, I guess, because I don't imagine it's going to be very far if we're going on a field trip to it. And then I just went to the library and I literally just read one book. It was the one by Colin Renfrew, which was like Prehistory of the Mind, which took me about 3 hours to get through, to be honest, but it was 300 pages, so I feel like that's pretty good. And now I'm home. It's 7:30 and I have made myself some dinner. I've made some spam, egg and rice. I have mixed it all, obviously, because I needed the egg while it was still runny and hot to mix in. So that's what I'm having for tea. Haven't really got any more updates regarding the masters on that because I literally spent the whole day reading. I can't say the book necessarily told me anything I didn't already know, but it's just another person to reference, so I don't seem like I've only read one person's opinion on something. So I'll take it, I guess. Tomorrow I've got work, so again I probably won't be doing much uni work tomorrow, but I mean we'll see when I get home how I'm feeling. Who knows? Happy Wednesday, everybody. Can't believe it's already Wednesday. I had an actually good day at work today, so I feel rejuvenated and like I don't want to quit anymore, which is always good. It was nice. Basically just giggled all day and everything went really smooth, so I'm pretty happy with that. But I'm just making myself some dinner. I'm going to do some soup and pasta, which sounds like a weird combo, but it actually is one of my favourites ever. So this, I'm going to show you my ingredients basically. Some pasta, just do a normal portion, whatever that is for you, no judgment there. Some vegetable soup. Weirdly enough, I think Morrison's own is actually the nicest. So it's basically it's like a tomato sauce, kind of, and then just a bunch of mixed veg in there. So like peas, carrots, swede, what's that? Potato, some beans. Yeah, love it. And then to spice that up, because to be fair, it's pretty plain, you're gonna have some salt and pepper, easy peasy. The secret ingredient I find is some chili sauce, which sounds crazy, but it really works. So I use this one, which is garlic chili sauce, because I love garlic, obviously. It is the Lingham's brand. You might have seen this in Wetherspoons, which might be where I got it, but it's really good. I love it. And then you just put some cheese in it. So effectively, you're making like a spicy tomato pasta with veg. It's kind of the vibe. So I've just got some Parmesan. It just needs using up, so I'm just going to use that. But I really like a strong, sharp cheddar. And then, because I went to Savers on my way home to buy some boring things like toothpaste and kitchen roll, I might have spotted this. In the like little alcohol bit they've got, and it's one of my favourite wines, and I don't drink wine that much. I do like it occasionally. And it's Echo Falls, so I know some people are like, that's not even real wine. which, yeah, maybe it's not, but I think it's tasty. So it's the raspberry and cassis one. If you ever see this, you need to try it. It's more like a red wine-ish, but what it's called is just like a blackcurrant raspberry wine. And I feel like, I don't even know if you can call it wine. It's kind of like sangria vibes. It's really good though. So I got this, and I'm gonna probably drink the entire bottle because why not? Honestly, why not? I washed my hair too, so going crazy tonight. Put some laundry on, and obviously I'm gonna keep watching Lost because I'm now quite a bit into season 4, and every single episode, I just can't step away from it. I love it. It's just so good. So I'm just gonna eat my soup and drink my wine, watch my TV, and have a very relaxing evening. And I'm really looking forward to it. Love. Here's what it looks like. It smells like Ribena. It's like alcoholic Ribena. It's really good. So please, everybody, go try it. I don't know where you can generally find it though, I will say, because I've only ever seen it in Savers and in Spa, which are two quite rogue shops to go buy wine from. Like, I've never seen it in an actual supermarket. So good luck finding it. But if you do, buy it because it's like £5 and it's alcoholic Ribena. So why would you not? That's on the silk bonnet, guys. My mum got me it, but I feel like I look like Squidward right now. Happy Thursday, everybody. I decided to stay home today. I did have a library booking, but I guess I'm not going to it because I should have been there half an hour ago. I did know I'd booked it, but I was just like, am I gonna want to walk all the way over there? I don't know. And so yeah, I guess I basically decided not to go because I didn't bother to set an alarm to be there. So here I am at home. I do also want to still do work today, obviously, but I'm just gonna do it from my little comfort seat over there. I've got a book I need to finish reading because it urgently needs to go back to the library. It's Creativity in Human Evolution and Prehistory, edited by Stephen Mithen, which this is one of those books, like I was saying last week, where the referencing is really annoying because every chapter is written by a different person, but the whole book itself is edited by one or multiple authors, if that makes sense. It's like if I open it, the introduction is written by Stephen Mithen, who edited the book, but like chapter 3, What is Creativity, is written by Margaret Bowden. So I'm a bit like, if I was to reference any of this in text, I can't just reference Mithen, whatever, 1998, Creativity in Human Evolution and Prehistory. I'd have to like reference Margaret Bowden, 1998, chapter 3, What is Creativity in Mithen, eds. 1998, Creativity in Human Evolution and Prehistory. So it's one of those really annoying books. But I do often find that those are very useful because although they're all written by different people to create like one piece of work, they all generally have like slightly different opinions and thoughts on stuff. So it's actually really useful to get like multiple authors referenced and their kind of ideas about how stuff works all in one go. So I don't actually know how long this is. Based on the size of it, it's pretty big. Looks like it goes up to 285, so it's another 300 pager, which will mean I've done 300 pages just this week, so I'm quite impressed with that. But once I've read this, I really want to get writing something. I did draft up that introduction, but I feel like I want to maybe take it a little bit further, maybe actually write out some sections, and also I really just want to get on with this lit review. Like, I'm a little bit concerned because in my original timeline I designed for this project, I would have my lit review and methods and obviously introduction very well drafted by June, because in June you kind of have like a midway through. It's not really called a viva, but it's similar to a viva where like your academic supervisor and then another member of staff from the department will read what you've written so far, sit you down, ask you questions about it, give you some feedback. And obviously, you want to have a good half of it done at that point. Not to mention, June is about the halfway point, slash beginning of July. That will be 6 months into my project. So I'm a bit concerned because it's going to be May next week, which means I've actually only got like, what's that, like 5 to 7 weeks until this is ideally going to be finished in terms of introduction, lit review, and methods. And I'm feeling like I'm getting behind now, especially with changing the idea and writing the lit reviews taking me way longer than I expected it to. In an ideal world, it would have been completed in the next 2 weeks, but I don't necessarily foresee that being done because it in itself is going to be about 8,000 words, which is my entire undergraduate dissertation, which obviously that took a good 6 months to write. So, and I don't have 6 months, so I need to really crack on and get writing something. So basically, by next Tuesday, when I have my next meeting with my supervisor, I want to be 100% ready to sit down and get writing. No more reading, unless it's like, oh, I really need a source for something. This guy don't quite say what I'm thinking, or reading to collect for data analysis. So I really genuinely just need to hurry up a little bit. I need to stop dilly dallying and enjoying reading books and actually get working effectively. Although I'm not too stressed because it's not like my supervisor has said to me, you're a bit behind or anything. So I think he would have already kind of called me out on that if it was a problem. But knowing that part of the lit review's already started to be written is kind of giving me some good feeling because it's not going to change too much, I'm hoping. But I really need to get on with it, basically, like redraft out the structure, what needs to be included. And I don't feel like I can actually start writing it till I talk to him, especially after my kind of like revelations the other day about is this definitely going to still be cultural focused, or is it going to be Neanderthals as a general? I don't really feel like I can do Neanderthals as a general purely because after reading um, Beresford's doctorate thesis or last week, beginning of this week, that basically does that, and that's not going to be. Although I could still pull the card that doing like quantitative analysis is different, so it's unique. Um, I just feel like it's too close. So I think I do really need to focus on the creative culture, but that's gonna, I think, make writing the lit review maybe a little bit harder potentially, but not necessarily a problem. So I've got a lot to think about and obviously a lot to do and just to get on with so that I'm in a good position by next week to really start sit down and writing. So yeah, I'm gonna get on with that and I'll catch up with you later maybe to talk about how far I've got with any of those things. So I've just been flicking through the book because I was like, let's see what chapters might be best to start with. I think I'm just going to read the whole thing, especially because the back just says, can a Neanderthal be creative? Yeah, can it? Tell me. That's my whole dissertation. Let me know. But flicking through it, whoever's had this before, I don't know if you can see because it's in pencil, has been annotating in it, which for me is a crime, like, especially in a library book. Like, I only have like noted in books at like A level English, and that's because I had my own copy, like it was my book. But even in my own other books, I still don't think I would do that. But like, they've underlined this section, which the chapter is early evolution of creative thinking, and they've just written a note that says, "What is thinking? What's the point of that? Like, genuinely, what's the point of that?" And there's some other bits. I don't remember where I saw it, but basically next to a section on like cognition, and like ability to create, they've just written a note on the side that says, so Neanderthals had a cognition that was equal to or more than a chimpanzee. And that's literally what the sentence said. Just write that in your notes, bro. Why are we defacing university books for this? And like, I'm not saying you can't write in books. If it's yours, do what you want. But when you like take it out of a library, I just feel like it's blasphemous. Like here, whoever it is just writ 3 members of the genus Homo. After the chapter, like this section of the text mentions Homo habilis, Homo rudolfensis, and Homo ergaster. Yeah, he literally says that. Why do you need to write that? You've underlined it. Like, they've underlined so much of this. Just, guys, have you never heard of a notes page? A Word document? A notebook? Like, it just really, it gets on my tits a little bit. Like, why would you do that? Right, it's 8 o'clock now, and I've finished going through this book, minus the third section, like the last couple of chapters, because they're on the Upper Paleolithic. Obviously, Neanderthals are not around then, so there's no point me sitting and reading that. And I would say I'd read it because it might just be interesting, but I have found this book to not be my cup of tea whatsoever, and that's why it's taken me a long time to read. I've also been watching Lost at the same time, so a mix of both is why it's now 8:30 and I've only just decided it's enough of this book. I didn't particularly enjoy it because, one, it's very theoretical in a sense that they're talking a lot about stuff in an abstract way. I mean, they've got quotes from Alice in Wonderland when they're talking about like cognition. There was a whole section on how like things become trends and material culture evolves by talking about the increase and trend and use of sports shoes. And I was just like, what does this have to do with Neanderthals? Absolutely nothing. I guess to certain people this might be a very useful book, but for me, I did not find it very useful whatsoever. I've barely written any notes on it, considering I've read 160 odd pages. I've barely written 3 pages of notes. So I've read quite a few of the chapters, but like some of them I've literally made one quote or reference down. It was quite useful in the sense that it's given a good kind of background on cognitive archaeology. It talks quite a bit about how it's important that archaeology is applied to understanding the evolution of the mind, because we use a lot of like psychology and things for that today, but there's not much research necessarily using like prehistoric artifacts to track a change and evolving of the mind. And I agree with that. I think archaeology can lend itself well to a lot of research about humans today. That's why we study it, you know. Archaeology, anthropology, history, we're all about figuring out why we did stuff in the past, how did we get here. And I agree with that. But I don't know, like, it just didn't really fit my dissertation. And that's okay, it doesn't make it a bad book, it just means that it's not for me necessarily. There's a couple good things about it, I think, like they use a lot of primatology when talking about Neanderthals opposed to ethnography, which we tend to use today. And just a heads up, this book I think is from 1998, so it's good nearly 30 years old. We've evolved as a discipline quite a bit since then. But the use of primatology is quite a good indicator of what the authors think about Neanderthals, because when we use ethnography, it means comparing Neanderthals to people. But when we compare them to primates and monkeys, specifically chimpanzees, quite a lot of the time, being that they're our most recent common ancestor, or whatever, you get my point, our long lost cousins, it's really pushing Neanderthals far back on that human spectrum towards primates, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because I think at the end of the day we're all animals, and so sometimes using animals as a way to understand us is a good thing, but I don't necessarily think it's a good thing when we're talking about human culture, because regardless of what you think about a Neanderthal and how human it was or how modern it was, they're not chimpanzees and they don't live like chimpanzees. So to use them quite abundantly as a talking point for understanding their culture, just in my opinion, isn't very accurate. So I didn't like that, especially when we talk about creativity, because chimpanzees, even inside test conditions and like laboratories, have been made to create art or tools, but they don't organically do those things in the wild, as far as I'm aware. And so already we know that Neanderthals were cognitively superior to a chimpanzee
we know that they were. Regardless of what these people thought 30 years ago, Neanderthals did create complex toolkits. They did have complex social lives and relationships with the environment. They created ritual spaces, they created ornaments, they even played around with ochre and such, which I think there's a test they did with chimpanzees where they basically gave them paint and a paintbrush, and the chimpanzee put paint on a canvas with a paintbrush and its fingers. That, to me, is not comparable to intentional engraving or ochre usage. So, I don't know, if I was a Neanderthal and I found out that people were comparing me to chimpanzees, I would be a little bit offended. Moving on though, they did have a good chapter on early evolution of creative thinking. The whole chapter is evidence from monkeys and apes, so again, monkeys, not a fan of that. But I thought it was quite interesting how it actually said, until recently it's controversial to consider that animals, including primates, were capable of any kind of thinking that could be regarded as radical or sentimental. And I put a note under that saying, could this be suggested that this is why we didn't think Neanderthals were capable as well? Because, again, we're putting them in the same bracket as the monkeys. So, obviously, why would they possibly be able to do radical and sentimental thinking? I just thought it was a good note to make. The chapter on Middle Paleolithic creativity, which was quite good because they talked about how Mysterian artifacts were quite stagnant in terms of like technology, and they go on about how they're a bit bereft of evidence for artistic and aesthetic expression, and how so-called art objects and decorated utilitarian items attributed to Neanderthals are extremely rare and controversial, which I think still stands true. But they suggest that the fact that the symbolic objects are rare casts further doubt on the actual symbolic content. And I thought that was quite an interesting point because I don't know who said it, I can't remember, and I don't know the exact quote, but effectively somebody said, I'm going to take a wild guess and say it might have been Paul Mellers because he's always up in these business, but the idea that the absence of evidence doesn't mean that there's an absence of that act in reality. When you consider deep time and the preservation of items, and maybe depending on the social situation, the limited number of people who were allowed or even capable of the skill to create symbolic things, maybe a lack of raw materials to get, maybe they don't have time, depending on how and when we're talking. Neanderthals might not have actually possessed the time outside of survival to create these things. Maybe, depending again how far back we go, maybe they didn't have the cognition at certain points in time to think on wider scales in ways that are like symbolic. Maybe that's just not something that was part of their culture. And I think that's interesting because today we don't consider how the rarity of an item totally would disregard its actual symbolic content. Just because they don't happen much doesn't mean that when it did happen it wasn't symbolic. Do you know? It's a complicated point, but basically I think it's interesting because we tend to stand against that idea today. And it's also quite interesting to point out how although innovation is quite minimal in the Mysterian artifacts, we do know that in order to survive from like 300,000 years ago to 30,000 years ago, Neanderthals as a species had to have been very adaptive because not only do they live in different environments in terms of temperature, they experience glaciations and ice age, as well as very nice temperate and mild environments. They also lived across very widespread geographical space, like in mountains, in tundras, in very flat like plains, through forested areas, through almost like deserted areas of landscape. Because they lived across all these times and spaces, they had to have been adaptive. So I think it's kind of interesting that they're simultaneously pointing those things out. Like, so they didn't adapt, but that doesn't have to be a negative or a slight on their ability to create. And again, that's why I don't feel like this book necessarily fits my work very well, because it always kind of never comes back to the point of creativity a little bit. and they're very broad with what they mean by creativity. Like, they're talking about language, social structure, hunting strategies, lithics, things like that. And I just don't feel like that. I feel like maybe it's even beyond my scope when I just really want to talk about when I say creative culture, I mean personal ornamentation and art, even to an extent burial, which then lends itself to maybe like religion and ontology about the world and things like that. So I don't know, I just don't feel like this book fit very well, hence why I don't think I'm going to be referencing it very much. Um, I did, however, like the point that they said that upper Paleolithic humans communicated through material objects, whether that be through redundant art objects or in personal ornamentation, and they doubt that might be the first time it ever happened. I think it's interesting to point out that they said upper Paleolithic humans, however, and not hominins or hominids. You know, like they're disqualifying Neanderthals from this conversation, and I think that is gonna mean potentially this book's actually very useful because I can use this maybe for data collection on how people in 1998 talked about Neanderthals. They were primitive, they were still related to chimpanzees, they were still inferior to us, they still potentially didn't have the cognitive capacity to create things. When they did, they doubt the symbolic ability or capacity of the object. These things are probably more useful than I realised. Actually, now I'm talking out loud. This could be a good book to reference for me to critique. But do I think it actually tells me much about Neanderthal creative culture? No.
Happy Friday, everybody. It's quite nice outside, so I'm gonna go outside. Basically, is the whole point of this. We've got some neighbors doing some work on the house with like scaffolding and all sorts, and so like since like 9 o'clock this morning, I've just been banging away, and it's literally only two doors down. So I just don't feel like I can sit at home and focus and do any work right now. Yesterday it was quite distracting, but I persevered. Today, however, I just don't feel like I want to listen to all that, to be honest. So as I don't have a library booking because I had originally planned to be seeing my friend today, but she has a dissertation due ASAP and she needs all the time she can get on it really. So I was like, we'll just reschedule, don't worry about it. So I haven't got the library I can really go take refuge in. So I think I'm just gonna go into town, have a mooch, get a little bit of sun on my face because I actually honestly blend into the walls at this point. Like, could you even tell I have a white sleeve top on right now? Probably not. Um, and then yeah, I think I'll have a mooch and then maybe find a cafe, go sit in it, do some work. We'll see. I'm gonna take my laptop with me because then I can do some work if I feel like it. But I honestly don't know. They probably so it's not even 12 o'clock yet. Like they're gonna still be here probably for a good 4 or 5 more hours. So I don't know. I'll see. Maybe if it's not too windy, I could sit outside somewhere. Like I know Weatherspoons is a crazy shout, but it's actually quite a nice place to work during the day in the sunshine. So we'll see. See how I'm feeling. But I'm just gonna go into town and see where the day takes me. I think.
Wow, the sun's really illuminating his asshole.
Right, I've just been into town, had a mooch, been to M&S, got some stuff to make stir fry for dinner. I wouldn't usually shop in M&S, but I was already there, and they had one of those like get a side of meat, sauce, all that like combo for a deal. So I was like, yeah, I'll just do that. But when I went to the charity shop, you would have seen I found two books, which I was like, get them. But look at this absolutely gorgeous light shade that I found for $4.99. Now I'll show you when I get back home, but I have a bunch of really nice like glass
lampshades for all of my ceiling lights, and I literally just needed one more, and then all of them would have a lamp on them and not just be light bulbs. So I couldn't believe it when I found that one. I was like, let me buy that real quick. So I'll show you the others when I get in, but I'm real chuffed, I can't lie. Dad's not here, so guess what that means? Dinner on the kitchen table.
Fully try to investigate it, but my Pisces is in Venus.
Happy Saturday, everybody. I'm dressed to go to the pub. Had an absolutely dreadful day at work. All the tills crashed. It was a mess. Thankfully, all the customers were nice, so didn't end up being too painful in that sense, but it was just a pain in the ass. And it's so sunny out. It's been like 18 degrees today. And so me and the girls were going for a cheeky beer. I don't know if that's also going to be that fun, because apparently York FC have just been promoted, so it's pretty busy in town. But figured why not? I don't have work tomorrow, so I'm going to go out now and I'll catch up with you later.
Happy Sunday, everybody. I'm dressed and ready to leave the house because I actually have a doctor's appointment that I'm going to in like 20 minutes. But I just wanted to end the vlog here, say thank you so much for watching. If anybody watched, as usual, nobody really does. But if you have, thanks for listening to me yap about my dissertation and where it's going. I know to most people it probably doesn't mean anything, but on the off chance if anybody watched it, cares about prehistory or dissertations or anything like that, I hope it was insightful. Maybe you had a lot to say about a lot of thoughts about how you're probably doing that wrong, in which case I'd appreciate a comment about that. I'm always open for criticism on how my research is going. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. As always, I hope you have a great rest of your week whenever you're watching this. And I'll see you next week, probably to keep talking about my dissertation. But as I've said, hopefully going to get into some good writing. Likely going to have to do that when I come home from the doctor's later. Um, Also, been reassessing my finances recently and need to get better with those. So we'll continue on this like stop spending money thing. I think I did an all right job this week until last night, but that's always a problem. I have a beer and I'm like, I could eat McDonald's right now, and I do every time. So yeah, we got a lot of things to improve on. We got stuff we want to do better, but overall, I feel like I've had a good week, and I'm really happy because at the minute, I've been happy. Like, it's been nice. I feel like if you watched a vlog from 2 months ago, you would probably be like, wow, she's so depressed and miserable all the time. But I'm feeling so much better at the minute. And I think that probably is down to the sunshine and it's been nicer weather. Getting into a good routine for the most part has definitely helped me out there. And so I just want to keep up the positive vibes, keep being productive, and hopefully that also might influence you to try and get your shit together too. Because at the end of the day, we're all just people trying our best, and that's honestly all that matters. But thank you for watching. Keep being sexy as you all are, and I'll talk to you next week.